6:35. Michelle should be here. We'll just go ahead and call the work session of the mayor and council for the city of Snellville, Georgia, Monday, June 8th, 2026 to order. We have a quorum. Everybody's here but Rochelle. She should be here in a second. All right, so we'll go through the regular business meeting items first. Invocation. Mike, since you're here, would you mind doing the invocation this evening?
Oh, it'll be an honor, of course. Thank you.
Anyone to lead the pledge?
I'll lead it.
Under ceremonial matters, we've got the proclamation to read for John Dennis. I've been informed that John will not be here tonight.
Yeah, he's not really one for public accolades. Didn't even want to get any kind of accommodation at the planning commission. There's literally 2 people there. So, yeah, he's not one for the lights.
So we're going to read it anyway.
Yeah, we'll send it to him. He'll appreciate it. He's just not that guy.
Yeah. When's his last day?
Oh,
Last Friday.
Last Friday.
This last Friday.
This
right?
Friday.
I thought it was June 30th. Well, I'm glad I ran into him in the hallway a week or so ago.
That's what he wanted you to think, so he didn't cause a big
Right. Then we've got the meeting minutes. There was an update from what was in the packet. One of the items didn't have the vote on it.
If you see that before, then you can always let me know, so it's corrected.
Yeah, if y'all, when you're reading the minutes, if you ever see anything that you feel like is incorrect, please let Melissa know as soon as possible so that we can, the minutes need to be accurate. So, I mean, there's usually not anything wrong with them, but every once in a blue moon.
I always appreciate everybody reading them.
But believe me, having been on trial with minutes in front of me, it does matter what they say.
So we have another set of minutes, or how, when we approve the minutes, what are we saying?
Well,
they're correct.
Melissa has the correct
Yeah.
minutes, yeah.
Okay.
It's just what was in the packet was
Gotcha. Thank you.
not up to date, but I called her and let her know so she read it.
Right here, the
Okay,
salary
I'm just
study.
fine.
Yeah, and then I added the vote. So that's what this is.
So that's what we'll be doing.
Thank you.
So we'll have the approval of the agenda should be just as presented. Under the public hearing, we have a video update. Jason, you want to run?
yeah, I
through
got a
the
few minutes
minutes?
for this. All right. So just in an effort to not inundate everybody at once with the details of kind of the grind of the UDO or any kind of amendment processes, is try not to get so deep into what you're reading that you'll necessarily kind of miss kind of what's happening. So I'm going to go over just very broadly some of the things we're touching, and I think it'd be really good for anyone that had questions about specifically what's inside each little amendment. Just come talk to me, because I can take some time, go right through the ordinance, and then we can use, I like to use the red line version because you can see what it was and then what it changed. If you try to read the ordinance, like, that's just to legislate. It's a lot, and it feels a lot heavier than it really is when you kind of just break down the technicalities where we're just going in and changing stuff that may not fit with the process, but doesn't really change any policy. And that's what a lot of this is. It's, hey, we've had trouble grabbing a definition, and because that definition wasn't there, it causes us trouble when we try to enforce something. So every time we just put it in a little ledger, and we're like, all right, when we do the next one, we're going to fix that. A lot of that, I'd say 70% of that is happening in this ordinance. But there is some stuff, some policy-driven stuff that you guys should think about. Nothing crazy, and most of it is into response of what's going on in our environment now, how it relates kind of Lynette's codes, how we've kind of cleaned up and deregulated, not necessarily deregulated, but simplified some stuff. And I'm just gonna go over them, and when I speak about them, kind of let you know whether this is a technical change or something where the policy has been affected. So I'm just gonna go through them, so bear with me.
And, well, and I would just say, so this is really just broadly, just technical corrections
A lot of it.
to, yeah.
Some
so
of,
just
there is
little
some,
things in
there is
the-
some meat though, and I'll bring that up so you can understand, and then you can focus, put your energy towards that, because it's something that you're gonna see. It's gonna be a little different. A lot of this stuff you'll never see. We'll see it, and we'll use it a lot, but these pieces of this toolbox, you guys won't. It's just, it's so technical. It's coordinates and kind of legally driven, and it doesn't, it's not a policy change. So, like the first one, we're talking about districts, we just added that, we missed it in the previous one, that's a technical change. I mean, not a technical, that's just an ordinance to make sure it's basically lines up the way we did everything else. It was inconsistent with the way we did it, so we added it back on number one to just the zoning district. And we did add some more definitions of terms. Cabana, carport, detached garage, pool house, side setback, and prefabricated structure. Anytime we introduce new language or find that we're missing a definition, I believe we just add all the definitions until we have a million. I mean, it's defined, easy to enforce, and the expectation is out in front with the citizen, whether that's a corporate citizen or a citizen in the city. It's all right there, and definitions are the key to a good UDO. When we don't have one, we add one. Land disturbance permits, all we did there was clean up some language about basically what properties apply. We strengthened it a little bit to protect some of these undeveloped lots with trees on them. Plans and plats. Back in the day, when the planning commission was really the planning department, they signed all the plats. They approved neighborhoods on the spot. We do all that now. So all the signature is anymore is calling the planning commissioner at the time and saying, hey, I need you to put your giant hand cap on here, because you know they don't ask, they just say this is what this is just a part of business. So typically a lot of jurisdictions don't have that political figurehead sign anymore if they're not involved in the process. It basically would just be a signature by the department. And back in the day when they were actually making the decisions, it made sense, but it doesn't make sense anymore because I'm waiting like it just takes time to get them up there. It reduces efficiency, and literally, where do I sign, Jason? You know, they're not reviewing anything. So again, that's more of an efficiency move. We did have some issues on how to interpret split zonings. It's happened like 3 times, but our answer in the UDO is not clear. And so the last time was the last time that we're going to have any kind of discrepancy. So now it's clearly enumerated, and we follow basically best practices. Now that's one other thing. Just so you, fundamentally, Snellville is part of Gwinnett. Gwinnett is part of Metro Atlanta. A lot of times, you don't have to reinvent these policies. You just go to the best practices and then you tweak them to fit your community. And a lot of times, you know, you look to the best practices. Gwinnett is dealing with the same things we are. And a lot of times they've dealt with it a lot more. So if they have a better way, or we can find a better practice, that's usually we do. We rarely just start writing stuff that we see just because that's dangerous. You don't know how it's going to play out, and we like consistency and applicability when it's appropriate. There are times when we need to be a little more customized, and I believe in that, but not all the time. We had to clarify some stuff about lots, only one principal building on the lot. Believe it or not, that was not in the code somehow. That's just another clarification. We did add some of these. This is something you may want to look at. Accessory uses in residential districts. We go a long ways to kind of define what you can do, what you can have, and where it can happen, because we get a lot of people that are like, what's that trampoline doing in the front yard or whatever? So we believe It is defined and the expectation is set. It can be whatever policy you want. If you want trampolines in the front yard, just say so. You got a majority, we can do it. We just kind of set it up, and we didn't want to leave anything out. We didn't have pavilions, pool houses. People try to find little places to hide in the code and then apply things when it's not expressly prohibited or allowed. So if we expressly prohibit it or allow it, then it's black and white. There's not a lot in between. We like to remove the gray as much as we can. This is something too. We did change basically how we permit some of these accessory structures. I'm basically talking about sheds, roofed accessory structures as defined as an accessory structure that's accessory to the home. That's roofed is pretty much like that. But what we had been doing was having everyone that applied, that built, that had anything over 20 square feet, which is 4 by 5, it's a little bigger than a doghouse, permit everything. So what we've done in some of the larger lot neighborhoods, like not neighborhoods, but zoning districts, 15 to 30, we've allowed those districts to permit up to 120 square foot of a shed or an accessory structure that's prefabricated or pre-made, like you would buy at Home Depot. We do still have certain, can't use the metal, or there's certain things you have to use, but you don't necessarily have to get it permitted under a certain size. And what was happening is we're getting inundated with these small structures or people aren't even permitting. So when we get there, it's a whole mess to try to get it back to where it needs to be. Now, it doesn't allow you to build anything without a permit, because then you're building it, and then it needs to be looked at and we need to inspect it for safety. And that's why we inspect for safety, not for permit fees, like people always say, paying for our own building. It's for safety. So what we did is anything under, and this is something that's consistent in the International Property Maintenance Code, which the state pulls a lot of their codes from, and Gwinnett County, it's all 120 square feet or less, it's no permit. They still have to be located certain distances, but if they're not, built rigidly into the ground, that stuff can be moved, and it's only allowed in the 2 biggest districts, 15 and 30. That's something you need to think about. If that's not a policy you want to move to, that's just something we're doing to kind of prevent just these mass incoming, permits that are usually after the fact, to give people a little bit of allowance to be able to go buy a Rubbermaid 10 by 10, slap it up in their backyard, and if it's 5 feet from the fence, it's good to go, but not in the small lots, because that affects people more. So look at that, read it over, see how you feel about it, and we can talk about it. That's something that we introduced basically based on what we see coming in, what we're doing enforcement, and then safety. We're not really worried about 120 square foot shed on a half-acre property most of the time. Normally, if they're prefabricated, they're in good shape. Just talked about that, but that's section 20 or 212, and this all enumerated in the red line version is what I would look at. Number 10 is just bringing it, basically cleaning the code up. Lot standards, we basically took out single-family detached from the duplex district, because it's a duplex, it should be duplex. We don't even grant those anymore, so it really doesn't matter. It's just there for stuff that's been built in the past. Now, a big change we did make, and it's not a change you'll notice based on how they've been developing, but with the townhomes, it's a good case on where you start somewhere, you change it, and then you got to bring it back to get back to what you really want. So when we started the townhomes, it was kind of, we didn't specify rear entry, so we got a bunch of front entry stuff. And then over time, we see through the decisions of mayor and council and other cities, Gwinnett County, that there's really been a push for the rear alley with the front street, push them up for aesthetics. So at some point, we tried to kind of add that back in the middle, but we didn't clean it all the way up. So now, every time we're reviewing these plans, there's always contradictions. Ronnie's, or the one up at Tree Lane, happened. Like, we literally were contradicting our own code. So what we did is we basically took Gwinnett's, added some extra layers on the outside for buffers, made the driveways a little longer, strengthened Gwinnett's, and basically followed it. We compared that with everybody else's, and it's pretty much the same across the county. So take a look at that one. It's a little more technical when you read it, but I can explain it to you. Let me just hit the highlights. Here's another one. Remove several residential group living uses from the RM district. Basically, those aren't compatible in a multifamily environment, so we removed them. And the bigger issue is we changed in the allowed use table. That's kind of our secondary tool sheet, that list of uses and then what zoning they can go in. We legislate, or we regulate a lot by that chart. So we've had these, before we had an outright prohibition for any kind of, like, what would you call it, behavioral counseling or behavior management or anything, and the state has a definition, so we added the state definition before, and the concern has always been the drug rehabs. You know, like, nobody wants a huge thing next to their neighborhood, so our answer at the time was just to prohibit. And maybe that's still what everybody wants the policy, but under what we proposed, you can basically request an SUP. It would only be granted by planning commission and ultimately mayor and council. It'd be a case-by-case basis in the more commercial districts, CI, OP, BG, and I don't think HSP. So the most commercial districts, not in neighborhoods, this would be something that they would have to come for you, and it could be a plethora of things, like behavioral health isn't always drug rehab. It's not always those things. So it's not, in my opinion, we hear about it a lot, and it's not necessarily a poor use in the right place with the right ownership. So that's something that we've added. That's something you want to look at. That's a pretty big policy change from where we come from. But we went from total prohibition to basically permission from the mayor and council, and the special use permit. Just, you guys have a huge leverage or ability to kind of decide those as you see fit. The law behind your answers aren't like specifically tied down to specific regs, like is this future landscape? It can be more of, we don't think this fits the community. It's not something that has to be locked down real tight, so it allows mayor and council, ultimately the public, to speak up and tell us the problems or what they're concerned about, and then you guys make the decision and move on. That was one of the larger policy changes. We did change some stuff over in the Grove for the parking deck. So basically, we had an old code that you have to be so many feet to a parking area to utilize the deck. These two buildings up here were too far away, so we were like against our own code even then, and which wasn't a big deal when it was just the apartments, but now the businesses are going, those spaces are getting full. There's hardly, you can't find a spot over there when it's busy. So just to make sure the code was right, we changed it to 600 feet, and that included them. We also added a little something for burn boot camp specifically, but it would be for other gym type uses. We prohibited those all in the town center because we thought, who wants a LA Fitness in the Grove? Well, we don't want an LA Fitness because, it would dominate, but who wouldn't mind a burn boot camp in a couple of spaces? It's minimal cars, minimal equipment, so we allow those type of gyms only if they're below 4,500 square feet, which gives them enough room, but not a huge room to kind of turn into a complex. So when you think about the Grove or the town center, you want those kind of uses that people can go to, enjoy, and even walk home. It's a good people use, and it doesn't generate a ton of cars. It's like there's not a ton of stuff in there. So, and they're a local company. We brought them over from one of these other shopping centers. Yeah, and they're moving up, those are the people we want to take care of more than anybody. They're the locals that we grow and then put them right into the mixes. So we changed that from 0 to 4,500 or less. So that was the policy change there. Added some buffers for, I think we heard this a lot from the citizens, from townhomes to residential. There's never been a buffer in place. And, you know, you hear, and I agree, the change from, even though it's residential to residential, still more intensive residential to a larger lot residential. So we added right on top, anything that touches RS 30 or RS 15 and RS 5 would get an automatic 15-foot buffer at a minimum. And you can always add that on during your process as mayor and council. You can add conditions if you feel like it needs more, et cetera, or reduce it if they ask for it. But now it's 15 feet. We always heard that. Why can't we have a little space? I think it's reasonable, especially when you start bleeding some of these more intense residential against our historic large lot residential. The tree ordinance was a mess as far as some of the calculations and the applicability to special and heritage trees, and that can get real boring, but basically what was happening wasn't clear, and folks were trying to shoot around this little gap in interpretation to not do what they were supposed to do. So basically we put it back and said very clear, you have to follow these rules. If you cut down the big trees, you gotta put back the trees that you had to plant already, and then on top of that, you gotta put the replacement trees back, because policy and council's faults in the past, even the trees that are like 20, 40 years now, are to protect the big trees. So the only way to protect them is to make them expensive to remove, and then folks start paying attention. If it's easy to just chop it, they're gonna chop it. It's easier development. They just push it over and sell the timber. So we felt like that policy, it was a good one, because over time, at least in previous council and what this council will do, but there's been a need to preserve the trees, and I personally think it's a good idea.
Quick question. You said big tree, that's based off the size or age or
Yeah, the size. So the way they do it now is basically called diameter at breast height. So the diameter of the tree at breast height, you circle it, and then I think our specimen, we have two levels. You have like specimen tree, which is I think 20-something inches and up, and then you have a heritage tree, which is like 30 and up. And you're talking, these heritage trees, they're 100, 150, 200 years old. So the thing I like to tell people is you don't get that growth back. We'll never see that. And when they go down, somebody will see the replantings, but it's going to be a minute. It takes a long time. So there's always been this consistent message from council to protect those. This is how you protect them. So a lot of times these guys end up stroking a check to the tree bank, and then you use that money to plant on any public property, so it becomes a beautification fund. It doesn't mean you can't cut them down, but when you do, you're going to put it in the budget. It's going to cost you. So that's what forces people to design around them. When it's cheaper to go around them, they'll go around them. It's cheaper to cut, so it's just a balance to see how you kind of want to have that fall.
So for us, Mayor, is the price something that, and I'm not saying change things, just for knowledge, is the price something that we are allowed to change as mayor and council, or that's something that's separate from it is? That's like if we wanted to make it more expensive for them to cut down the heritage tree, that's what I'm asking. That's something that's votable.
That's policy.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's ways.
And we've done that.
Yeah, we've riched it up.
Yeah,
Okay.
so a lot, because
Way stronger than what that.
we were having trouble. There were a couple of, all of a sudden we get wild phone calls coming in that one of the
It was,
developments, the
Kroger.
It was the Kroger.
Kroger and the
Yeah,
Home
that caused
Depot, a landscaper, they had their landscaper go in and cut down all the trees in the parking lot. And by the time we caught them and the police stopped them, they had already cut down
Yeah, like
like
42 trees.
40 trees.
And you know why?
But it was only like $100 or $150 for a penalty. Well, after that,
Yeah,
Dave
bumped it up to
Emanuel was
1,000.
like championed, it's up to $900 a tree now. And we caught, it started happening at the Target shopping center too.
Yeah.
And
Caught
caught them halfway through, so, and I think they were at the $900 a tree level.
Yeah, matter of fact, just some instances of that recently. We had one over at Mavis. We had one, you don't see all these, but they came in and whacked out all those trees. You gotta remember, the conflict is always gonna be business versus aesthetics. And most business owners, whether it's true or not, I don't believe in this digital age that signage matters as much as they think it does. But that's what they hold on to. When the sales drop, where's my signs can't be seen? That's the first thing they think, because that's what they think visually. Folks are on their phones, man. Very few people are driving by and see that Mavis and say, I'm gonna stop and get my tires there. Would you? I mean, you're gonna go where you're gonna go. You're gonna check your reviews. Somebody's gonna recommend, but you're not driving by looking for Mavis for tire special. But they cleaned out all the trees. It was part of a zoning condition. We ended up having to go, find them. They pay to find, they have to replant the trees plus some. And, but it's still 10 years before we see that growth again. So what we want to happen is define, and the people know, you don't come into Snellville without getting a permit first, because people have been getting hurt. And that's usually the best way. Those landscapers, they talk to each other. Once they know they'll get their hand slapped, they're gonna come and get the permit. But until then, it's kind of like, what do you see? Even the old Chick-fil-A, this guy took down a couple of trees. We noticed, people noticed, they call it in. And he had to drop a couple of trees, and cost him like $2,000 and $1,000 fine. I bet she doesn't cut them down anymore. But the whole thing is always trees, block my signs, I need to cut them down. But there's ways, we allow them to trim. There's other things we can do to give them more visibility, but they always go in hot with the chainsaw first, and that's what gets them in trouble. But
And just one other note on the tree stuff. There was a committee, I think, that was formed way before I was on council, that really looked at the tree ordinances and all of that to preserve the canopy and, try to get people thinking about it. So it was a long process, I think, that they went through, very thoughtful process, and I think it led to changes in the land disturbance.
It was the first real landscape tree ordinance, like tree protection ordinance, that came out in like 2000. I think it was in 2002, 2003. And that was kind of like the basis of it all. Now we've modified it, improved it, customized it to suit our needs, but the base was all still there. And it's pretty common. Tree protection is a big deal, especially in metro areas where you're fighting that, you're fighting development versus existing land, and that conflict is always going to be there. There are ways you can do to soften it, to create more robust designs that kind of integrate some of this stuff in, and that's what we've tried to do over time. You'll never stop the trees from coming down, though. Like, in order to develop a site now, stormwater really runs your whole site, and in order to get stuff to grade and fall and get to those ponds, they'd rather just scrape it all down and regrade it. That's what they want to do, because the money all goes to this stormwater infrastructure, and designing is so stringent now. So what you want to, you want to kind of slow some of that down and make them decide where they want to spend their money. So maybe they have to go around the tree, but we didn't really change anything there. We just tightened it up and made it more clear. But you guys probably weren't familiar with a lot of that. So the last change we did was our lighting ordinance. When we dropped that in, and I think the first lighting ordinance was early 2000s. We haven't touched that in 25 years. It was really complicated. Even the tools you needed to use, they don't make anymore. Gwinnett has a one-pager. We didn't really like that. It wasn't as specific. We know how light trespass causes problems too. It's always commercial to residential conflict. So what we did was we did simplify ours, and then we regulated some numbers that are mostly lower than the county in every spot. We did allow for light to be more, I'll say lit up, but in specific cases, ATMs, gas canopies, commercial in corridors, no one should be afraid of seeing light there. I think everybody wants to see light in a dark parking lot when they go. What you don't want to do is look out your front door and have it shining in your eye from a cat. So the protections are built to keep the trespass, that's what we call light trespass, off the property, on the property, but we allow for lighting in those specific areas that we didn't have before. There was no specifics for all that. It was just so generic. It was actually came from Arizona too. It was a dark skies ordinance. So if you can imagine, it was tight. It opened up. We tightened it back down. Now we're just basically trying to find that balance between enforceability and design so that people know what they're expected to do. And that's basically install lights that shoot down, they don't leave your property, and there's minimums for whenever they touch residential. Like you can only have so much bleed, and it's a very small number. So the lighting code's a little more technical just because it's terms you've never seen before, but it's still common sense. You know, shine down, lower the lumens or raise them up where appropriate, keep it off the residential. That's the easiest way to explain it. But
And this is where technology has come into, you know, 30 years ago, the parking lot lights were just huge spotlights.
Metal
And
halide,
now, now they've got designs now that are, you know, a lot more targeted and it
more
can be
efficient.
bright in that area, but not like the next property's over.
So for us, have you seen any complaints? So issues like, we talk about residential versus business, where business lighting not meeting up to
Oh yeah.
our city code.
Yeah, all the time.
Okay.
And when we have the appropriate code in the chamber, you know, we can go take care of it. But that doesn't happen, that happens during plan review more than anything. By the time it gets installed, we know where the light's gonna be. So we catch it on the front end, because the last thing we wanna do is let them put in 15 light poles and then have to tell them to rip them up. So they submit what's called a photometric plan. So what they do is take the specific fixtures, they all have like what's called foot candle values or a spray area. I don't know what the technical is, but like basically an imprint of where their light goes. They drop them into CAD, which is computer assisted drafting, and then they do all the work and they overlay those different footprints, and then it gives you a value. It's called a foot candle. It's basically how they measure light. We've got this old one from like 1990 I'm gonna bring in here. Johnny Green is still using it, but it measures like how bright the lights are. Yeah, it looks like something from Stranger Things, dude. It's wild, yeah. And you turn it on, it's got a big cord, and I was like, what is this thing? And somebody told me, and Johnny said, let's see if it works. It works, but it's just a basic, you know, foot candle is just a basic measurement. And you can go online and say, what does 1 foot candle look like? What is 10? And then I'll help you kind of give you what your eyes will see. If you look under racetrack, under that canopy, some of those are 30, 40, you know, but around the edges, it should be less than 3. So you should see it taper off. ATMs, some of those are really bright, but then your regular parking lots, like just regular, are usually 10 or less. So like Target, Walmart, those are all probably 10 or less max around. But if you go and you can do a little Googling, what does this look like? It'll give you a better understanding of what that 1 foot candle means versus so you can understand the code, because you got to see it. You know, we've seen so much light pollution, or we've seen it for so long, we kind of know how to identify it and correct it. That's all of it. It gets really interesting in there too. If you need to sleep at any point in time, just start on that first one, the definitions. You'll be out by number 10. But dig in if you want. Look at it. Come see me, because I can spend way more time with the technicalities and help you if you have any questions, just so you understand what you're actually looking at. And the policy, then you can shift the policy. And if you want to shift the policy but don't know how to change the code, you don't have to worry about that. You just have to tell us what you want to do. Of course, as you know, as a mayor and council, we'll do the work and get it spit back out. And we put Jay to work on this one too. He loved it.
Very long.
It's not the red line version, but it's.
But there should be, is there a
No.
did the red line come in their agenda packet? I'm pretty sure it did for the first reading. If not, I'll make sure you okay, I'll get you most up-to-date red line version tomorrow morning. Or Wednesday at the latest, and then you can read the red line, reads just like this. It's the cleanest version. You can see what was there, what's been crossed out, and then what's been added, so you can compare it to the old. Yeah, so I'll give them the red line. I think the red line's easy to read because you know where we came from, where we're going to, and if you don't know the code, you would never know what you were even looking at. If it just gave you the amendment, you'd be like, well, what am I looking at? So I'll get you a copy of this, won't be a big deal.
Yeah, I appreciate the red line,
Again, come talk to me. I'll make time.
So, yeah, what I would recommend, you know, go up, just call Jason and schedule a time to go up and sit down and at least hit the points that if you read through it, hit the points where you didn't understand, or some of the policy decisions that he said, and then you could talk it through with them. Because I know a lot of times, especially in zonings, I'll read through the staff report and I just don't understand where they're coming from and I don't agree with it. And then I'm thinking something different, and then I call him and we talk it through and he tells, well, but if you did that, this is why, it gives you all the rest of the stuff that's the problem. And then, it just makes it a lot
And we're
better.
gonna try to dial, we had a very unique situation where John was so good with all that data. He went above and beyond to kind of not over-explain, but he hit you with a lot of data in those staff reports. And I think it's beneficial, but sometimes it means almost information overload. So we're gonna try to not dial them back, but concentrate them to be a little more efficient with the thought process, so you don't have to call 50 times and be like, because even I got caught up in some of those. So we're going to try to just bring it back a little bit as far as just inundating you with technicalities that don't necessarily, they're germane, but they're not germane specifically to that case. So you'll see that a little bit in the future too. We got Daniel is up there. Daniel Smith is the new zoning administrator, so I'm going to train him up too. And we did hire, also Neely is leaving in August or September from full-time to do a little part-time. And so we hired Esther from SYC to work upstairs, and she's been really great. She's a brand. I knew right away. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So she just started today. So she's excited. She's a go-getter too. So we're losing a lot of experience, but we're getting some nice young brains, and which I'm excited about to kind of shake stuff up a little bit. You get stagnant over time. It's nice to have folks come in and say, what are you doing? Or how can you fix this? The last time we had a guy fresh out of college, Georgia Tech planner, he came in and he was like, you need to change this. I'm like, oh, slow down, fellow. By the time he was done, we had, it was a lot of good change, so I like to, that's the benefit, of course. I'm, sad to see them go, but it is what it is, and just keep pushing. That's all I've got on this one.
Okay.
Any more kind of-
All right, so that's public hearing, and this is first reading. So the motion will be to waive and place on the June 22nd agenda. Under new business, we have the adoption of the budget. Any other questions or comments on the budget draft? Matt's going to give an abbreviated version of the overview that he gave at the last meeting, just in case there's anybody else here, or just to let things sink in a little bit more. And then we have the second reading on the solid waste ordinance changes. Any questions there? Then we have the parking lot changes for overnight parking around the town center. So this is a first reading. Again, the motion will be to waive and place on the June 22nd agenda. So this is what the staff had presented several meetings ago. So y'all read through it again. You said you added.
So there was one addition, we added record service, how we, record service,
Okay.
how we decide who that record service will be and what we decide as a staff. It will be, the police department has, was it 6 or 7 folks, chief? That are kind of in a pool that the PD's already vetted and used for different things around the city, accidents and whatnot, if things in detail for that sort of reason. And so we would use a competitive process with those 6 or 7 folks to select the person that would be serve as the record service for this ordinance, specific kind of enforcement ordinance there. That's really the only other, and that's, I think, just a paragraph there. The rest of the content on the parking ordinance, you've seen twice now, the original kind of first discussion and then now in this first reading here. But if there are any questions, again, we're happy to answer any offline if you want to come in, and we'd be happy to go over it and make sure people are comfortable with what's being proposed there.
So still time to, read through again, and if you think of other scenarios that are or are not addressed well, just let Matt know. Then we have item D is the amendment to the purchase and sale agreement for 2218 Scenic Highway, which is the Shell station. If y'all remember, I think we had that discussion that we're extending the time frame for them for the remediation to allow them to try a different procedure.
Yeah, different method.
So that's just extending that deadline as we talked about.
Bert, can I add something?
Yep.
So just in the original purchase sale agreement, we withheld about $150,000, and we were going to give it to them in two different payments if they met different criteria. The first one was removal of the tanks, which they've done, and the second one is to receive what Georgia EPD, Environmental Protection Division, calls a no further action letter, NFA letter. What that means essentially is that there's no further remediation action required of the property owner on that specific property. So it's something important for us to have for redevelopment there. So they tried something called a high vacuum recovery. Initially, I remember they put the 5 wells around there, tested that water, tried that, didn't work. Now they're going to try something called I'm going to read this, in situ chemical oxidation pilot test. I don't know what that is. Yeah, what you
Do those all the time.
buy at your local drugstore and do it, kind of one of those things. They're getting approval from EPD for it. They'll probably start the first, test of it in August, observe, do another round for a few months later, observe, another round, observe, and then hopefully by that time they'll be able to see the contaminants getting below the threshold that EPD needs them to get behind, or get below. And then the EPD will issue that no further action letter that will be delivered to us from Mr. Patel, the previous owner, and then we will release that last $70,000 to him. So really we're amending the contract, that date, to get that letter to us from the end of last year, so December 31, 2025, to June of 2027, June 30th of 2027. UES, the environmental engineer, thinks it'll take about a year from interventions to, doing the intervention to testing to see if it worked. Another round of that will take a year or so, there.
So this is the deadline that you're extending?
That's right.
So we're extending, thank you.
To get that no further action letter
Yeah.
from them, saying EPD says you're good.
And just, since we are in a public meeting, just as a reminder too, it's not like there's, like the property's glowing green with radiation or anything like that. It was just, the contaminants were just above where they want to see them, so it's not huge. I don't think the issue's as big.
And this is
It's not a chemical spill.
This is very common for any gas station.
Yeah, talking with UES, I asked them, I said, well, having to do a second type of intervention, is that something we should be worried about? And they said, no, I mean, you do several sometimes to get the numbers you need to get. So they don't seem concerned, so I don't think we should be concerned, and we trust them, they're a good firm. But it is just, it's part of the process. It's just something that's got to be done. And as Jay mentioned last time, either Mr. Patel does it or we have to do it if we want to redevelop the property. So we might as well extend and let them continue to pursue that NFA letter.
That for the Georgia Protection Agency, I guess that's mainly dealing with them. So on their side, they have a list of the chemical solution that Mr. Patel, whatever company hired, wants to use.
They got to go through approval from them. Okay. Yeah, so anytime, that's a good question. So anytime UES or Mr. Patel is going to do any kind of intervention, they have to get EPD approval. That's part of it too, so they understand, the EPD understands what's going on down there and what they're going to be looking at when they submit their reports. Yeah.
And giving them an extra year is not going to delay any development because we're still doing the,
We're still in the very, very early stages of concept
Yes,
planning.
Yeah, it's gonna take us that long.
Right, that's it.
Anyway, we wouldn't be ready for construction before then, so. And then the rest of the meeting are nominations for reappointments to our boards. Thankfully, we've got a lot of people that are, staying on and renewing, which is helpful in the training process, that we have more experienced people on boards.
Can I ask a question? Does any of our boards get a salary or a stipend for transition? Does anyone pay?
Planning Commission does.
Planning Commission now does, and that's recent that we've added.
Why do we pay them and not the other departments or committees, boards?
And quite frankly, we're having a hard time getting people to be willing to serve on it. And it
So
was a very
it's a-
dense subject matter and a lot of legal implications if they get something wrong.
The other, Parks and Rec is, they have like 6 meetings a year, and you're not dealing with issues where you've got 200 or 300 people packing in a room angry at you. They also don't have the level of training that a planning commissioner has to go through. Planning commission, there's several training days, there's a lot of reading to catch up to where you are, where you need to be with all the legal implications, so,
a lot of phone calls to Jason.
yes.
And
Thank
the
you for explaining
county,
that.
the county is the same, exactly the same.
Yeah. So, we were having a lot of turnover. People will join, they get through some of the training, they go through a couple of meetings, and, 8 months, 9 months later, they're resigning because of, whatever. So we do have a vetting process where we have them come to a meeting first and sit down with the existing board members so that they can ask questions back and forth and just make sure people understand what they're committing to. Because it is really disruptive, on our side of things when someone signs up and you start doing, start training them, bringing them along, and then they resign on you, before their term's over.
Do we have an ethics board?
No. Okay, so that's the regular meeting, and we're almost out of time. Any correspondence? City attorney's report on,
Yeah,
be quick.
Just to read through this. So, just town center, we just talked about the parking ordinance, that's in front of you now to look at that. Our June events down at the Grove include Unity Day and our Downtown Tunes concert. Those events are back to back. So Downtown Tunes is the 18th, and that's a Thursday, and then Unity Day will be the 19th, that's Friday. Let's see, just mayor and council input on development zoning guidelines. So we're still waiting, staff's still waiting for the legal review to be completed by Jacobs. They're on the contract that we sent them. When that is, available for us, Jay will look at that. If he approves it, then you've all authorized Barbara to sign it. It's Jay's, he will sign off on it there. Briscoe Park, package sales, nothing to report here. Briscoe Park Community Center, so they installed the sheathing and waterproofing on the exterior walls of the admin building, which is good. And they've completed about 75% of the roof decking, which is kind of the first level that the roof sits on there. And we'll get the roof on, and then weather won't be as much of a concern, for folks on getting stuff done. And then they've begun curb and gutter work in the parking lot, and then they poured the what's called the elevated deck, which is in the office areas, and they poured that outdoor patio, covered patio, which is kind of cool. They already had some of the framing up, so they had it's called a pump truck, and you got the truck, and then there's this really long metal pole that kind of comes out, and then it comes down, and you got someone who just kind of guides it, and just the concrete's just pouring out, and they're just kind of moving it around, and then people are kind of spreading it out and getting it where it needs to be. But because of the metal framing and stuff, they had to be real careful where they were moving that metal, the metal spigot or whatever you want to call it. So kind of interesting to watch. North and Wisteria, so the contractor will begin on the punch list items this week or next. There's several of them on there. but they'll work through them and close out that project there. And we'll talk about we'll continue our conversation on the sewer project next meeting. We don't have time here, but the last thing I'll mention to you is just Javi, Melissa, Mercy worked really hard on an RFP for a Christmas decor contract. And so they've issued that RFP. We'll get bids back this week on the 11th. And we'll review them and we'll make a recommendation to you guys hopefully next meeting on a vendor for Christmas decor decorations. What we put in that RFP is to try to follow kind of the leasing model that we've done now, where we're putting up some of the existing stuff we have, but then if we want, we're leasing some stuff from lights, and maybe if there's other kind of fixtures or things we want, we can lease those out for the contract.
Thank you, Matt. And we have nothing else on the agenda, so we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Finish the motion. Is there a second? In favor? And I will see you over there.